Even for members of the royal family, there is something quietly magical about discovering a house that feels as though it has been waiting for centuries to be noticed. Some buildings exist simply as places to live. Others, however, seem to carry within their walls the accumulated memory of time itself. Forest Lodge belongs firmly to the second category. Hidden within the immense greenery of Windsor Great Park, the house appears almost like a secret revealed only to those patient enough to wander deep into the ancient landscape that surrounds it. At first glance, it may appear modest compared to the vast palaces normally associated with royalty, but that first impression quickly fades the moment the details begin to reveal themselves. The red brick facade glows with the deep, warm tone that only centuries of English rain and sunlight can create. It is the color of aged honey, softened by time, yet still rich with character. Every brick laid in the elegant Flemish bond pattern reflects the work of craftsmen who built not simply for decades, but for generations. Constructed during the late 18th century when Georgian architecture reached its most refined moment, Forest Lodge embodies the quiet confidence of that era. Georgian design never attempted to overwhelm the viewer with excess. Instead, it relied on balance, proportion, and harmony. The front of the house stretches across 9 perfectly aligned bays, a composition that instantly communicates symmetry and calm order. The 3 central bays project slightly forward, drawing the eye naturally toward the entrance. It is an architectural gesture both subtle and powerful, guiding visitors inward without theatricality. Above the roofline rise 6 tall chimneys, standing like sentinels above the structure. They create a rhythm across the skyline, reminding us that houses of this period were designed not only to impress, but also to function as warm, livable homes during England's long winters. Approaching the entrance reveals some of the most elegant Georgian detailing found anywhere within Windsor Great Park. Smooth stuccoed pilasters frame the doorway with classical authority, while a delicate dentil cornice crowns the entrance like a finely cut piece of jewelry. Large sash windows stretch across the facade, each carefully proportioned to flood the interior rooms with natural light. Among them are magnificent Venetian windows, 3-part compositions that allow the interior spaces to open visually onto the surrounding parkland. Through them, the ancient trees of Windsor appear almost like living paintings. Inside, the house continues to follow the principles that made Georgian homes so enduringly admired. The rooms are arranged with both practicality and elegance in mind. 8 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms provide space for family life, while reception rooms offer areas for entertaining guests in comfort. But the true architectural jewel of Forest Lodge lies deeper within its walls. At the center of the mansion sits an extraordinary ballroom, a space designed not simply for gatherings but for moments of spectacle. Its ceiling rises high above the floor, decorated with intricate plasterwork that reflects the artistry of 18th century craftsmen. When the chandeliers are lit, their light dances across these ornate patterns, casting gentle shadows that transform the room into something almost theatrical. Even an ordinary evening in such a space can feel like a scene from another century. Throughout the house, marble fireplaces provide warmth as well as beauty, each one carved with classical motifs that speak of a time when even the practical necessities of a home were treated as opportunities for artistry. Elaborate plaster cornices soften the meeting point between walls and ceilings, while original stone flooring connects the present moment directly to the era in which the house was first imagined. And yet, for all its historical elegance, Forest Lodge is not a museum. It remains very much a living house, one surrounded by nearly 4,800 acres of royal parkland where ancient oak trees rise above gently rolling fields and morning mist drifts quietly across the landscape. In this remarkable setting, architecture and nature seem to exist in perfect balance, which is precisely why, after one of the most difficult periods of their lives, Prince William and Princess Catherine began to see Forest Lodge not simply as another royal residence, but as the place where their family could begin again. Beyond its elegant brick facade and carefully balanced Georgian proportions, Forest Lodge carries something far more powerful than architectural beauty. Like many houses connected to the British monarchy, its walls have quietly witnessed generations of history, decisions, and personal stories that unfolded far from public view. The land on which the mansion stands forms part of Windsor Great Park, a vast royal landscape whose origins stretch back nearly 1,000 years. Originally created as a hunting ground for Norman kings after the conquest of England in 1066, the park evolved over centuries into one of the most protected and historically significant natural spaces in the country. Today, the park covers roughly 4,800 acres of woodland, lakes, gardens, and open fields. Ancient oak trees stand scattered across the terrain, some believed to be several centuries old. Their enormous branches spread like natural cathedrals above the grass, offering shade and quiet that feel almost untouched by modern life. Within this landscape, Forest Lodge appears not as a dominating palace, but as a house that belongs naturally to its environment. The surrounding woods provide privacy that few residences in Britain can rival. Long winding paths disappear into the trees, while narrow drives connect the house to the wider park without disturbing the serenity of its location. This sense of seclusion has always made Windsor Great Park a place of refuge for members of the royal family. Unlike the ceremonial grandeur of Buckingham Palace or the official atmosphere of Windsor Castle, homes within the park offer something far more valuable to those who live constantly under public attention. They offer silence. For Prince William and Princess Catherine, that silence became increasingly important in recent years as their lives were shaken by events no family ever expects to face. Their previous home, Adelaide Cottage, had originally seemed like the perfect solution when they moved there in August 2022. Located only a short distance from Windsor Castle, the four-bedroom cottage offered something rare for a royal household: privacy combined with simplicity. The Wales family hoped that Adelaide Cottage would allow their three children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, to experience a childhood that felt as normal as possible while still remaining close to their great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. But the sense of peace that surrounded that move would not last long. Only 2 weeks after the family settled into their new home, the nation received news that would mark the end of an era. On September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away peacefully at Balmoral Castle in Scotland after 70 years on the throne. For Prince William, the moment carried profound personal significance. Not only had he lost his grandmother, but he also instantly stepped into a far more demanding role within the monarchy as the new Prince of Wales. The quiet family refuge that Adelaide Cottage had promised suddenly became a place filled with grief, responsibility, and the constant pressures that accompany royal transition. Yet even that difficult chapter would soon be overshadowed by something far more frightening. In January 2024, Princess Catherine entered the London clinic for what was initially described as a planned abdominal surgery. At first, the procedure appeared routine, and the public was told to expect a relatively straightforward recovery. But during post-operative tests, doctors discovered something that would completely alter the family's year: cancer. The diagnosis came as a shock not only to the public but also to the family themselves. Catherine later described the moment as deeply unexpected, explaining that the discovery forced doctors to immediately begin planning preventative chemotherapy treatments. By February 2024, she had already begun the long and exhausting process of treatment. For Prince William, the months that followed demanded an impossible balance. He was not only the future king of the United Kingdom, but also a husband supporting his wife through cancer treatment, and a father trying to maintain stability for 3 young children who could sense the anxiety surrounding them. At the same time, the royal family was facing another health crisis. King Charles III had also been diagnosed with cancer during the same period, placing additional pressure on William as the heir to the throne. Suddenly, the weight of both family and national responsibility rested heavily on his shoulders. In November 2024, during a visit to Cape Town, Prince William spoke publicly about the year. For the first time in a way that surprised many royal observers with its honesty. "Honestly," he said during the interview, "it's probably been the hardest year of my life." For a man who had already experienced the loss of his mother at a young age, the statement carried immense emotional weight. Inside Adelaide Cottage, the small rooms that once promised peace had become associated with worry, whispered conversations, hospital visits, and long nights of uncertainty. Every corner of the house held reminders of the struggle the family had endured, and slowly, quietly, the idea began to form that perhaps what the family truly needed was not simply time to recover, but a completely new place where the memories of that difficult chapter could finally begin to fade. A place that offered not only privacy and security, but also the promise of a fresh beginning. And within the quiet woods of Windsor Great Park, Forest Lodge seemed to offer exactly that. Long before it attracted the attention of modern royalty, Forest Lodge had already lived several lives of its own. Houses of this age rarely remain unchanged through the centuries. Instead, they quietly accumulate layers of ownership, purpose, and meaning, each generation leaving behind small traces of its presence. Forest Lodge first emerged in the 1770s, during a time when Georgian architecture had reached the height of its elegance. Britain was experiencing enormous social and economic transformation. The country's expanding empire, combined with new wealth flowing into the upper classes, created an intense demand for refined country residences where aristocratic families could retreat from the bustle of London. Originally known as Holly Grove, the house was conceived as a refined country retreat rather than a grand palace. Yet even in its earliest form, the property carried the architectural discipline that defined the Georgian era. Georgian architects believed that beauty came not from excess, but from proportion. Every element of a building needed to relate mathematically to the others. Windows, doors, chimneys, and even the spacing of brickwork followed strict rules that ensured harmony. Forest Lodge was no exception. The building's 9-bay composition created a visual rhythm across its facade that remains deeply satisfying even today. The symmetrical arrangement allows the eye to travel naturally from one side of the structure to the other, giving the entire house a sense of calm stability. Inside, the layout followed the traditional Georgian plan: reception rooms arranged for entertaining guests, private family chambers located above, and service areas carefully positioned to allow household staff to move discreetly through the building. Yet, like many English country houses, the story of Forest Lodge cannot be separated from the complex economic realities of the 18th and 19th centuries. In 1803, the property was purchased by Spencer Mayer, a wealthy landowner whose fortune was tied to Caribbean sugar plantations. These plantations, located in what was then British Guiana, generated enormous profits during the colonial era. Many of Britain's grand country houses were financed through similar overseas ventures, and Forest Lodge is no exception. While the mansion's graceful architecture represents the aesthetic achievements of the Georgian age, its history also reflects the broader global forces that shaped Britain's wealth during that period. Over time, however, the property's connection to the British Crown would grow stronger. On June 27, 1829, during the premiership of the Duke of Wellington, the estate was officially acquired by the Crown. From that moment onward, the house became part of the vast royal holdings associated with Windsor Great Park. Its new role was practical rather than ceremonial. Forest Lodge was designated as the residence for the Deputy Ranger of Windsor Great Park, an important position responsible for overseeing the maintenance, management, and protection of the royal parkland. Several distinguished figures occupied the house during the 19th century. Among them were Sir William Fremantle and Francis Seymour, who later became the 5th Marquess of Hertford. Their presence reinforced the property's reputation as a residence reserved for individuals of significant responsibility within the royal estate. Yet perhaps the most curious moment in the mansion's history arrived nearly a century later. In 1936, Britain experienced one of the most dramatic constitutional crises in its history when King Edward VIII abdicated the throne in order to marry Wallis Simpson. During that turbulent period, discussions arose regarding the use of several royal properties. Edward reportedly expressed interest in allowing his equerry, Sir John Eyre, to occupy the house. However, the king also disliked the name Holly Grove, which he apparently considered unsuitable for a residence of such character. It was during these discussions that the house officially received the name Forest Lodge, a title that perfectly captures the spirit of the property. Surrounded by woodland and integrated into the natural environment of Windsor Great Park, the name reflects the quiet intimacy of the location far better than its earlier identity. Over the following decades, the mansion would repeatedly appear in conversations about potential royal residences. In 1975, for example, the house was widely rumored to be under consideration as a possible home for Princess Anne and her first husband, Captain Mark Phillips. Although that plan never materialized, it demonstrated the estate's continuing appeal to members of the royal family seeking privacy without complete isolation. Another proposal surfaced in 1998 following the divorce of Sarah Ferguson from Prince Andrew. Reports suggested that Queen Elizabeth II considered offering Forest Lodge as a residence for the Duchess of York. However, the idea was ultimately abandoned. Despite these near moments of royal occupancy, the house remained largely outside the public spotlight for many years. That changed dramatically in the early 21st century. In 2001, the property underwent a significant restoration valued at approximately £1.5 million. The renovation focused on preserving the building's historical character while ensuring that its structure and interiors could support modern living standards. Original architectural features were carefully maintained, stonework was repaired, plaster details restored, and the historic layout preserved wherever possible. At the same time, discrete modern systems were introduced to make the house comfortable for contemporary residents. The result was a house that retained its Georgian elegance while quietly adapting to the expectations of modern life. For decades, Forest Lodge existed as a beautifully maintained but relatively unknown property within the royal estate. Few could have predicted that it would eventually become associated with the future king and queen of the United Kingdom. Yet by the mid-2020s, after one of the most emotionally challenging periods of their lives, Prince William and Princess Catherine began to look beyond Adelaide Cottage. And slowly, attention began to turn toward the quiet Georgian house waiting patiently within the woods of Windsor Great Park. A house whose long history of near-royal occupants suddenly seemed to be pointing toward its most significant chapter yet. When Prince William and Princess Catherine began considering Forest Lodge as their future home, the decision was about far more than simply relocating to a larger house. For the couple, the choice represented a careful balance between royal responsibility, family stability, and the evolving expectations placed upon the modern monarchy. For centuries, British monarchs have traditionally lived at Buckingham Palace, a residence that functions not only as a home, but also as the administrative and ceremonial center of royal life. Since Queen Victoria established it as the primary royal residence in 1837, the palace has symbolized the formal authority of the crown. Yet times are changing. In recent years, Buckingham Palace has been undergoing an enormous renovation project expected to continue until at least 2027. The scale of the work, combined with the growing desire among younger members of the royal family for more private living arrangements, has encouraged a gradual shift in how royal residences are used. King Charles III himself has shown a clear preference for Clarence House, the elegant residence near St. James's Palace where he lived for many years before becoming king. Unlike Buckingham Palace, Clarence House offers a more intimate atmosphere while still allowing the monarch to perform official duties when required. Prince William and Catherine appear to be following a similar philosophy. Rather than viewing royal life solely through the lens of tradition, they have increasingly emphasized the importance of providing their children with a stable and grounded upbringing. Forest Lodge offers precisely the kind of environment that supports this vision. With its 8 bedrooms, spacious reception rooms, and surrounding parkland, the house provides more than enough space for both family life and official engagements, yet it remains far more manageable and private than the vast royal palaces that have historically served as monarchs' primary residences. One particularly important aspect of the move involves the couple's financial independence. As Prince of Wales, William receives income from the Duchy of Cornwall, a vast estate established in the 14th century to provide financial support to the heir to the throne. The duchy controls land, farms, commercial properties, and investments across Britain. In the most recent financial year, the duchy generated profits of approximately £22.9 million, allowing William to fund many of his personal and household expenses without relying directly on taxpayer funding. This financial structure enables the Wales family to cover the costs associated with moving into Forest Lodge using private funds. The property itself is estimated to hold a market value of roughly £16 million, reflecting both its architectural importance and its prestigious location within Windsor Great Park. Although the Crown Estate technically owns the building, William and Catherine will pay market rent for the residence, creating the unusual situation in which the reigning monarch, King Charles III, acts as the landlord for his own son. In practical terms, however, the arrangement simply reflects the long-standing administrative structure of royal property management. Preparations for the family's eventual move into Forest Lodge began quietly during 2025. Local observers reported increased construction activity around the property, with builders working behind temporary privacy screens erected along the surrounding fencing. These measures were designed to maintain security while allowing renovation teams to carry out necessary upgrades. Planning permissions approved by the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead allowed for several modest modifications to the house. These included adjustments to fireplaces, certain window modifications, and other interior changes intended to adapt the Georgian structure to modern family needs. Care was taken to preserve the building's historic character. Because Forest Lodge holds Grade 2 listed status, any alterations must comply with strict heritage protection guidelines to ensure that its architectural features remain intact. The renovations also introduced updated security systems, discrete modern infrastructure, and improvements designed to support the family's daily routines without disrupting the historic atmosphere of the property. Outside the house, the surrounding grounds offer an environment that is almost impossible to replicate elsewhere in Britain. Within Windsor Great Park, the Wales children will have access to vast areas of woodland, open fields, and quiet paths, where they can explore nature away from the intense scrutiny that often accompanies royal life. The location also offers practical advantages. Forest Lodge sits only a few miles from their current home at Adelaide Cottage and lies closer to Lambrook School, where Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis are currently enrolled. The shorter commute will allow William and Catherine to continue one of the routines they have tried hardest to maintain, personally driving their children to school whenever possible. In the years ahead, Prince George is also expected to attend Eton College, the prestigious school located not far from Windsor and attended by both Prince William and Prince Harry during their own childhoods. Maintaining a residence within the Windsor area therefore provides long-term stability for the family as their children grow older. Another interesting aspect of the Wales family's domestic life involves their decision not to employ live-in staff within the house itself. Unlike many traditional royal households, William and Catherine prefer to maintain a sense of privacy inside their living spaces. Their longtime nanny, Maria Teresa Turion Borello, along with household staff, are expected to live nearby in separate properties within the royal estate. This arrangement allows the family to maintain professional support while preserving the feeling that their home remains primarily a place for family life rather than an extension of royal administration. If everything proceeds according to current plans, the Wales family is expected to settle into Forest Lodge by Christmas 2025, establishing the house as their primary residence for the foreseeable future. Yet the significance of their decision extends far beyond the practical details of renovation, security, or daily routines. By choosing Forest Lodge as their long-term home, even after William eventually becomes king, the couple may be quietly redefining what royal life will look like in the decades ahead. For generations, British monarchs have been expected to live within the grandeur of enormous palaces that symbolize the authority of the crown. But William and Catherine appear to believe that the future of the monarchy should depend just as much on authenticity, family stability, and personal connection. Forest Lodge offers a place where these values can coexist with royal tradition. a house where children can grow up surrounded by ancient trees and open fields rather than marble corridors and endless ceremonial rooms, a house where family dinners, school runs, and quiet evenings by the fireplace can unfold alongside the responsibilities of public service. In that sense, the Georgian mansion hidden within Windsor Great Park represents something larger than a simple residence. It represents a new vision for the monarchy itself. And as Prince William and Princess Catherine prepare to begin this new chapter within its red brick walls, Forest Lodge stands ready to witness the next generation of royal history unfold. Yet perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Forest Lodge is not simply the architecture, the royal history, or even the scale of the property. What truly makes the house remarkable is the quiet symbolism it carries for the future of the British monarchy. For centuries, royal residences were designed to communicate power. Massive palaces such as Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, or Balmoral were never meant to feel ordinary. They were constructed to project stability, authority, and permanence. Their enormous halls, endless corridors, and ceremonial rooms reflected an era when monarchy relied heavily on spectacle. But the world surrounding those institutions has changed dramatically. Modern royal families now live under constant public observation, where every gesture, decision, and lifestyle choice is analyzed by millions of people across the globe. In this environment, authenticity has become far more valuable than grand displays of tradition. Prince William and Princess Catherine appear to understand this shift more clearly than most. Their approach to royal life has consistently emphasized relatability. They have spoken openly about mental health, family challenges, and the pressures of public life in ways that previous generations of royals rarely did. Choosing Forest Lodge as their permanent residence fits perfectly within that philosophy. Rather than retreating into a palace separated from everyday life, the couple seems determined to build a household that reflects the rhythm of an ordinary family, at least as much as possible given their unique responsibilities. Within the walls of Forest Lodge, the grand ballroom that once hosted elegant gatherings will likely still welcome guests during official receptions and charity events. The chandeliers will continue to illuminate formal occasions where diplomats, philanthropists, and cultural figures gather beneath the ornate plaster ceilings. Yet only a few rooms away, life will unfold in far simpler ways. The large Georgian windows that once framed horse-drawn carriages will now overlook children riding bicycles along the park paths. The marble fireplaces that warmed aristocratic guests centuries ago will provide cozy corners where a modern family gathers for movie nights and quiet conversations. The half-barrel vaulted hallway that greets visitors at the entrance will echo with the sound of children running toward the door after returning from school. And perhaps, most importantly, the house will offer something that cannot easily be measured in architectural features or property value. It will offer continuity. Royal children have historically grown up moving between multiple residences depending on seasonal schedules, official duties, or changing roles within the monarchy. But William and Catherine appear determined to give Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis something rare within royal history: the experience of growing up in a single-family home. The 8 bedrooms within Forest Lodge provide not just accommodation, but permanence. Bedrooms that will witness childhood milestones, teenage years, and eventually visits from future generations. Over time, the house itself will begin to accumulate the memories of the family who lives there. Birthday celebrations in the garden, holiday gatherings during Christmas, quiet mornings before school runs, evenings when the pressures of royal duty fade temporarily behind the closed doors of a private home. These ordinary moments are often invisible to the public, yet they are precisely what shape the emotional foundation of any family. Forest Lodge, with its centuries-old brick walls and surrounding ancient parkland, seems uniquely suited to hold those memories. There is also something poetic about the timing of this new chapter. The house stands only a short distance from Adelaide Cottage, the place where the Wales family endured one of the most difficult periods of their lives. Within those smaller rooms, they faced illness, uncertainty, and the immense emotional strain of supporting loved ones through medical challenges. But just beyond that chapter, within the quiet woods of Windsor Great Park, another house waited patiently, A Georgian mansion built in an age that believed architecture should create harmony between human life and the natural world. A house that had spent centuries passing quietly through history, occasionally brushing close to royal life, but never fully becoming part of it. Until now. Forest Lodge will never rival Buckingham Palace in size, nor will it replace the ceremonial importance of the great royal residences that symbolize the British state. But that may be exactly the point, because the future of the monarchy may depend less on grand spectacle and more on the ability of its leaders to remain connected to the people they serve. A king who still drives his children to school, a queen who continues to advocate for health, family, and community. A royal household that values stability, privacy, and authenticity. In that sense, Forest Lodge represents far more than a beautiful Georgian house hidden among the trees of Windsor Great Park. It represents a quiet transformation, a shift from monarchy as distant institution toward monarchy as human family. And perhaps that is why this particular house, modest by royal standards yet rich with history, has captured so much attention, because behind its red brick facade lies something every family, royal or not, ultimately seeks, a place not defined by titles, ceremonies, or expectations, but by the simple and powerful idea of home.